Right, so this particular session is going to be specifically on tools and techniques, but not on pedagogy. But so we are not going to discuss about things like how we can plan a curriculum where online assessments are part and parcel of it. So that discussion is a very interesting discussion. We are interested in such discussions, but in this particular session, we are not going into that. So we are going to stop at tools and techniques. These are the possible options we have. That is what we are going to say, not pedagogical aspects of how such assessment can be integrated, how they can be looked at from a curriculum design perspective. We'll not go there. But always keep in mind that's more important. We also agree that they are more important. And particularly this presentation is going to only focus on tools and techniques, like the title says. And again, about tools and techniques, we will not do a complete list of tools and techniques, everything that is out there. If you have just done a simple search, you would have realized that there are thousands of tools and a lot of different techniques that you can use to do assessments. So we'll take a few, particularly a few that we are using, and those we are familiar with, and therefore we can share our experience. So that's a smaller list is what we are going to do. So like rightly identified by your university, so it's very important that when you want to do assessment, particularly, obviously online teaching and learning as well. So assessment particularly, because of the importance we give to assessment, it's very important that we have to have the institution and also the other stakeholders like the assessors and assessees, their readiness before we start implement any assessment process. Right? So the institution and stakeholder readiness is something that is very important. We accept that fact, and we have overcome it to some extent, I would say. And like I said, we are conducting online exams these days, but it's not an easy ride. We had a lot of challenges. We had a lot of training programs, a lot of discussions, a lot of brainstorming. A lot has happened, and therefore we'll be very happy to share our experience on that. So, but in terms of doing an online assessment, the institutional and the stakeholder readiness is something very important. So before now, the plan for the rest is I'll be discussing about different type of assessments, and then techniques and tools related to them. Some of those techniques and tools you already have discussed over the last, during the previous session, you have discussed a few tools and techniques. So, and therefore I'll sometimes be just touching upon those tools and say, okay, so see, okay, this tool is out there. It can also be used for assessment and so on. But then there are a few tools that are like more designed towards assessment, and they can do better in doing assessment. So such tools we'll discuss more details. So we start with, to start this discussion, we will start with defining assessment into two types. One, the formative assessment, the other one, the summative assessment. Right. So I will just highlight the fact there are these two types of assessments, and then there are no hard and fast rule, black and white. We can divide any assessment into these two, right? So formative and summative, but depends on the intention, depends on how it happens. We have some separation. It's possible to do such separation. And obviously the intentions are to some extent different, right? So the goals are different. For formative assessment, the goals are particularly, it's about looking at the progress or monitoring. And summative assessment, it's about the evaluation, right? So, so there is a intention difference between the two. But in terms of what sort of tools we can use, how we can evaluate, there's enough gray area. Right, so that's about the two. So the plan for the rest of my discussion today is I included a few techniques and tools under two types, like the two traditional assessment types, formative and summative. And I'll be taking a few examples from this, because like if I want to go and discuss all of them one by one and show every step, it can take a lot of time. And therefore, I will take time to discuss a few and show you step by step how they can be done, right? So I have divided the tools into two. Also, the type of things we can do into two setups. The red color ones are, say, for instance, under formative assessment, we can use discussions or forum. We can use polls like we already did. And then there are tools that can be used for doing interactive activities. We, in fact, have used a couple of these tools in the last session. And then there are tools like Perusal for doing reading assignments online. And I have again introduced you to this tool for doing online, the reading online. And under summative, I have again identified a few tools that I regularly use and useful. There can be many other tools, right? So under summative, and also most of these tools that I have listed here are coming from this learning management system called Moodle, because the learning management system called Moodle is the most popular one in Sri Lanka, and almost all the state institutions are using Moodle, and therefore most of these tools are part of Moodle, right? So wherever possible, I have highlighted that, say Moodle Q&A forum, Moodle quiz, Moodle assignment, Moodle workshop. They are all part of the Moodle system. The others are not, and we'll see how it depends on the discussion, how it goes. So in the summative assessment, in fact, like almost all the tools are coming from Moodle, which is easier because you already have access to it. Your students should have access to it. Plus, students have accounts there, so they don't have to create separate accounts. It's easy to do things like validation, whether they are the one who are doing the quiz, exams, whatever assessment. So it becomes easier when you do Moodle with Moodle, and also we are promoting that as well, because it's like we all have access to it. So the type of things we can do, or at least I'm dividing it into 4 groups. One, quizzes. So in the traditional sense, quizzes in a class. So where you give a number of questions and ask them, mostly like MCQ type or short answers, where you give them questions and ask them to answer. Usually used as a continuous assessment or like in the formative type, but it could also be used for a summative assessment as well. The Moodle quiz module has 16 different type of questions in it, and therefore it's you can set up a versatile exam paper using quiz module. The one I mentioned at the very beginning of the discussion, the Proctored online exam that we are conducting here, the underlying paper is prepared using Moodle quiz. Right, so the exam paper is prepared using Moodle quiz. But therefore, Moodle quiz can be used as just a simple quiz for a simple quiz activity up to like a final exam. Right, so it has a versatility like that, where it can be used in various places. So how Moodle quiz work? Those details I have given here in slides. Like I said earlier, I will not go through the slides, but I'll do a demo, right? So you can later match, like look at the slides to follow up. I have written down things like how to create more like a first step guideline, a simple guide. A detailed guide you can go and find. Like for instance, here I have put links for guides for each item. Let's say if you want to know every detail about how to set up a calculated question. So there are question types called calculated question. Altogether there are 16 different types. Calculated questions means you can you can let the students to give answers as expressions, and they can be auto-marked. You don't have to let the students to give a multiple choice. You can, you can always allow students to give multiple choice answers. You can give them to give true, false answers. You can let them to give matching answers, like match one side with the other side. You can let them give short answers, numerical answers, essay type answers, calculated, drag and drop, and so on. There are 16 types. So there are specific documents which tells you, go step by step and show you how you can set one of these up. Right. So those there are these help documents. I have just put some links. You can look at them and follow setup exactly. But here I'm going to give you an overall idea. So everyone, just to clarify one more time, quiz is different from this assignment, at least in the Moodle sense. Quiz is used for setting quizzes of 16 different types, right? So you can set a combinations of all 16 are also possible. So you can set up a paper or a quiz of any of these types. That is what quiz is about. So intention of a quiz is to do the assessment synchronous, meaning all are doing at the same time. You give a time window and let everybody to do it at the same time. That is the intention of the quiz module. Meaning, like you say, okay, tomorrow 10 o'clock we start, 11 o'clock we finish. All have to do at the same time. That is the intention of a quiz. The intention of an assignment is homework, which is different. We give them longer period, right? So the intention, I'm saying about the intention, but these tools can be manipulated and used in different ways. But let's say the intention is to give a quiz 1 hour, but I can set the 1 hour to 24 hours or 48 hours. It's up to me. But the intention is different. Right. So intention of a quiz is you just be there and do it. Right. So an intention of an assignment is different, where you can go download or take a question and go back, sit and do it on your own pace, and then come back and submit. That's the difference. Right. So it's similar in like a traditional classroom, or like an assignment or like a homework is given where you can go back and the students can go and do it leisurely and come and submit. A quiz is different in a traditional classroom. A quiz is done during the class, right? So that's the difference. So the same applies here also in the Moodle system, right? So that's the starting point. Now I'm talking about quizzes, right? So when I want to set up quiz in Moodle, there are 2 components I had to worry about. One, I had to set up what we call a question bank. A sequence of questions that I can use, similar to, remember the poll I were talking about, pre-creating questions. Similar way, for a quiz, I had to set up what I call a question bank. The question bank can have questions related to a particular course. So say I'm right now in a sample like a test course. So all the questions I create in this question bank will be available throughout the course and throughout the period. The question bank is not time bound and also not specific assignment bound or an assessment bound. Question bank is general. I create them and I keep them. And then I have what you call quiz instances. So for example, someone has created a link here. That's a particular quiz instance. So question bank, then I have quiz instances. So quiz instance is basically a particular quiz, which is time bound, and also like time bound meaning it has to be done at a certain time. And also it is done within a certain period of time. And it also has to be done at some point in the course. So if this course is running for 15 weeks, I can do a quiz in week 3, another quiz in week 7, another quiz in week 15. I can do 3 quizzes. Now these 3 quizzes are quiz instances, I'm calling them. Right? So they had to be set up separately by saying, okay, week 3, Monday, 8 o'clock, I want a quiz. That is an instance. Week 7, Tuesday, 9 o'clock, I want a quiz. I had to specifically set quizzes at certain times. That is one. The other one is I prepare 100 questions regarding this course and keep all of them. I can use these questions whenever I want in one of those quizzes. So one is called the question bank. The other one is these quizzes. Obviously, the question bank is going to be used for making quizzes at certain points. It's more like if you already have, like, let's say you already have for your course 100 different questions from a pool, and you can take and use them whenever you want in a particular assessment. That's the idea, right? So I'll start by showing you how a question bank is made. So in the question bank, I can make different type of questions. This is where I'm talking about the 16 different type of questions. I can make any one of them in the question bank. So how do I go there? If you are a teacher, turn on editing. And in fact, like you can see here, it depends on different versions of Moodle. There are small differences, but in general, under administration, you will see something called question bank at the end. So I click that. It will take me to a different window like this. You can see a window with 4 tabs. One called questions, another one called categories, another one called import, another one called export. 4 different tabs, right? So I'm taking the very first tab called questions. So the question tab can be used for adding any one of these 16 different type of questions. I can add questions in the question tab. The categories tab can be used for putting these questions into different groups, right? So putting questions into different group is a very useful exercise, because let's say you have 100 questions. Now, if you have all 100 questions in a single list, you will also find it difficult which question map to which ILO, so which chapter, which lesson, all sort of difficulties, right? So it's a good idea to put questions into categories. So let's say you can put them based on the ILO. So you can put them based on the topics. You can put them based on the lessons and so on. You can decide, right? So you can put them in categories. I'll show you how to do it. So first thing I'm going to prepare questions. So I can just click create a new question. Here I can choose a question type, right? So I can choose a question type. Like I said, there are these different type of questions. You can choose one. Let's say I'm choosing a true false, the simplest possible type. True false questions. I say add. So here I can add question. So I can put a name to the question. Let's say true, false. I'm just giving a name. You can give any name, right? So true, false, question 1. Here I can type the question. So that's the name for the question, just to give a name. So that will be appearing as the name in the list of questions. So it's easy for me to understand, identify what it is. So you can give a better descriptive name also. So this is the question itself. So the question itself can be a text, you can insert images, you can insert videos, all sort of things you can insert. Or you can make all these superscript, subscript, underlines, all sort of different things. You can put a table, you can put various things. Whatever you can type inside this box, you can make a question of that type, right? So I'm going to make I'm just going to type some text, but I can do any other things, like I said, right? Sample, true, false, question 1, right? So I can add this. I also can add other things like I was telling you. So I can put a table also like that inside the question. So it's just a description of the question, right? So I can put things like this. I also can add the images if I. Yeah, so a screenshot of this, and I'm adding that. I'm just to show you that you can also add images and give a description. Right, so you can also add, so inside the same question, I also can add an image, right? Any image, some downloaded image, all that you can add. You can also add videos, and you can add links, and all that you can add. So that's just I'm describing you how one of these text box where I can type some description looks like. Everywhere you see a box like this, you can add any of these things, right? So that's the question. Now we can decide the marks for this question. And by the way, marks are, when you are putting marks for multiple questions, you have to have some similar type amount of marks. Let's say you are putting 10 here, and other questions, if they are of similar weight, put 10. Because when you put these marks, later it's possible to aggregate them, take averages, all that are possible. So it's just a matter of deciding. So the default was 1, so I'm keeping it as it is, right? And there are various other things which I'm going to skip for now. And there's a general feedback I can give. I can give an ID for this question and so on. But the most important part of this, the next thing, is the correct answer. Remember, the type of question I selected is true, false, and therefore the answer can be either true or false. So I can select that also. So let's say the answer for this question is false. So that is the default, and I'm leaving it as it is. So this particular question, this is how you can set it up. By the way, these things you can leave them empty also. They are not compulsory, right? So you can just say the question description, name of the question, and you can say whether the answer is true or false and stop there. You don't have to put all the other fields. I'm just showing an example where you can put what to put to other places. Feedback for true response, feedback for false response. That is what it means. And then you can also allow them to try multiple attempts. It is by default set to in 1. In fact, you can also set these things up later. I'll show you how it is done for a particular quiz. So these we are just setting questions, right? And I can say. Now you can see when I have done this particular question, under the questions, I see one question and the title of the question also. The description of the question, the name of the question, which is a true, false question 1. That is what I called it. So I can go and set up questions like this one by one. Then I'll just to quickly show you how we can make categories, right? So I can put these 4. Right now I have 4 questions, right? So I have 4 questions here. Let's say I'm going to put them into categories to show you how this category works. So I can make, let's say I'll make 2 categories. I'll call the first category cat1. I'm giving a name to the category and that category. And I'm going to make another one called cat2. So now you can see I had 2 categories. One is called cat1, another one is called cat2. Both with 0. 0 means no questions in it as of now. So I can go to questions and I can move these questions into categories. Let's say the first 2 questions I added, I select them, I move them to category 1. So now you can see category 1 has 2 questions, category 2 there's nothing, right? So I can go back to the main questions, all where you can see all the questions. The other 2 questions, I'll move them to category 2. Now, if you go back to categories, you can see category 1 within bracket 2, meaning there are 2 questions in category 1. There are 2 questions in category 2. So then it's easy for me, like whenever I want, I can take category 1 and see the questions in category 1. A category doesn't have to be cat, right? It can be a proper name that is easy for you to manage and understand, right? So now that's all I'm going to show about question bank, where how you can set up questions, how you can import questions, and how you can put questions into categories. The next one is, now I'll go back to the course. Now in this course, I have 4 questions and I have 2 categories. I have made all that. I've shown how to do it. Now I can think of doing a quiz. Now let's say I want to do a quiz tomorrow at 10 a.m. Right? So let me set that up. So I only have a question in the system. I am not having a way of giving these questions to students yet. I just have a question back. Right? So now how do I do that is I can add an activity, select quiz, add. So here I can give details. It's again another form where you have to fill. So we'll call it quiz or sample quiz. Right. So I created I put a name. If I want, I can put a description or I can just skip it. But there's this timing, other information. There are some more information which are useful and you can give, and therefore I'm going to show what they mean. 1, I can give a starting time for the quiz. I said tomorrow, 10 a.m. I'm putting the starting time. And I also can put finishing time for the quiz. Let's say 11 a.m. 1 hour quiz. 11 a.m. Right? I also can set the time limit for the quiz. So the time duration is that, and then the gap is given here is the time the quiz starts and quiz finishes. So it can only start at 10 and it can't run beyond 12, right? So within that, 1 hour is okay. And you can also decide various other aspects. What happens when the quiz expires? So the quiz can expire when it is 12, or quiz can expire if it's running for 1 hour, whichever comes first. When the quiz expires, what do you want to do? We can decide that here. The one I am always proposing is to do this. Open attempts are submitted automatically. So when the quiz finishes, the students don't have to do anything. The system will submit everything. There are other options also possible. Like for instance, there's an option like there is a grace period we can give a time, like it will announce you, okay, so now we are done. It will take you can take some more time to submit. That's possible. Or you can do this also. When the quiz expires, it's not the students have to submit the quiz before it expires. After it expires, it's not counted. That's also possible, more of a harder rule. But what I recommend is this option, which is more flexible for students. They also know, like, okay, so when they are done, when the time is up, it automatically submits. They can't do anything about it. So that option. And some of these other options I'm going to skip. Now we have set up the quiz to some extent. I'll remove that option and save. Now you can see the quiz is set up and you can see the quiz. It says that number of attempts allowed is 1. The quiz starts tomorrow at 10 a.m. It's supposed to finish by 12, but it's a 1 hour quiz. But there are no questions put in here. So I can add questions to it by clicking edit quiz. So what I did, I now set up the quiz and I'm going to add question from my question bank. So I said edit quiz. So here I can see this sample quiz, all these details, and I can add from this corner, add questions. So I can add question from the question bank. In fact, like this question bank adding question is, I can just pick a question from the question bank and add. Or I also can add question randomly from the question bank, meaning every time the student comes in, or different student coming, we can make them to see different questions. Let's say I have 100 questions in my question bank, and in a quiz, I want only 10 questions to appear. So I can do out of the 100, just pick 10 random ones and show it to a student. Pick random 10 and show it to another student. So the students will see different questions. That can be easily done. I'll show you how to do it. So I can say a random quiz here. So what I did, add random quiz. So it brings up a window like this. In the window, I can choose from which category I want to choose the questions. Remember, I have category 1 and 2. Category 1 had 2 questions. I can say from category 1, I have 2 questions, but I will select one from them randomly. So it says number of questions, random questions, I say 1. In fact, I also can say 2, meaning both the questions are selected. There's no randomness there, right? So 1 and add. You can see what has happened. Now a question appears here, but it says it's a random question from category 1. Category 1 has 2 questions. When the student select, it will pick one of the 2 and show. So different students will get 2. I mean, now we only have 2, but there's no much options. But if I, let's say, have 10 questions in category 1, and if I select 1 for 10 students, if you have a uniform distribution of randomness, they'll get 10 different questions, right? But if you can put a pool of questions and choose from them, that's the idea, right? So I can add another random question from, I'll add not a non-random question, I'll just to show you. I can add the question from the question bank directly. Let's say from category 2, I select both the questions from there and add. So now I have made a quiz with 3 questions, question 1, question 2, question 3. Question 1 is a random question from category 1, meaning it will be either first question or second question from category 1. And from the other category, I have added both the questions. So I'll get 3 questions in the in the quiz, 1 from category 1 out of the 2, and then category like the category 2, both the questions, they both are going to appear. I also can decide if from category 2 I only want 1 as well. So I can do this. I deleted 1 now. So from category 1 I have a random question. Category 2 I picked a particular one. The other one won't appear at all. And I can save. So let me go back to the quiz. So now it's possible for me. Now I have added questions. I can go and preview as a teacher. The students from tomorrow 10 a.m. they can do the quiz. Right? So I can do a preview now. So that's a preview for me as a teacher. I click. So from category 1, I'm getting this question, which is whatever I typed. And that's the first question. And then I can answer that. So remember, this is a true false question I selected. I can't remember whether it's exactly that. So and the category 2, the second question is appearing. I can answer. By the way, you can see on the corner, I have the timer running. I also have the name, photo of me, all that there. Right? So as a student, I can finish. Right? So, and also I can submit. That's possible. Right. So the next time I come in, the first question can be another one as well. Why so? Because I have made it a random one. So it will be 1 out of the 2. Right. So that's all I want to show with quizzes. I'll spend some time regarding this homework peer evaluation type of assessment. Like a traditional homework, we ask the teacher go to a classroom, give a handout with a question paper, or write down the question on a board and ask them to take it down and prepare the answers at home and come and submit it. It's a traditional homework. So the traditional homework can be sort of done online using a place where teachers can put questions and students we put as assignments and students can answer and upload assignments. So that is what the Moodle assignment module help you to do. So meaning you give a handout questions and collect answers, mark, and give feedback, individual feedback. So that's possible with Moodle assignment. Moodle workshop is very similar to Moodle assignment, but it can do one more thing, which is peer assessment or peer evaluation. So, like in a traditional assignment setup, teacher give an assignment, students work on the assignment, submit, teacher marks, and teacher give feedback. So in this process, whether we can bring in students also into the evaluation, the answer is yes, and that pedagogically it's called peer evaluation. So when it can be done, there are different options. One, it can be done right after students submitting the answer. Then we can let the students to mark each other. Like in a traditional school class, our teachers used to do that. Right? So they ask the students to exchange answer books and ask them to mark while the teacher guiding. Okay, this is the answer for this, mark it, right? So instead of doing self-assessment, like the self also can mark when the teacher gives answer, but we can also exchange and mark. When you exchange and mark, depends on the type of questions, you will also learn. Students are expected to learn there and also see others' mistakes and see how to see mistakes and various other aspects, pedagogical aspects. So peer evaluation supports that in Moodle. So the Moodle workshop module is an extension to Moodle assignment module. So it's very similar to Moodle assignment, but the extra part there is we can let students to mark each other and also self if you want. So let's say you have a 20 class student class and you give assignments. So there are 20 assignments submitted. Now you can decide these 20 assignments who are going to mark. So obviously they can be marked by teachers and also they can be marked by students. So I can set up in Moodle workshop something like this 20 assignment. Each student will mark 2 assignments, not their own, but others. So meaning each answer will have two marking done by students. Right? So they mark two others. One person will mark two others. Another person will mark two others. It can be automated. So when the students submit answers, the teacher can enable a period during which, so teacher can also give a rubric, for instance. Teacher can give a rubric, let the students to mark others. How many other assignments a student mark can again be decided. Let's say 2. So meaning every student will mark 2 assignments of their colleagues or their peers. And then when that process is done, teacher get another chance in the dashboard to go through these markings and decide. Either the teacher can give a third marking feedback and submit and decide whether the students' marks are going to be considered for the final marks, or only the teacher's marks are going to be considered. All that it's up to the teacher. But this additional part, the student assessment, like the student evaluation part of the peer evaluation part, is integrated to this Moodle workshop module. Right? So the assignment module is just teacher-student interaction, marking, feedback. Here the students also come into picture. They can mark each other. They can also mark personally. So all that can be set up. So that's the workshop module. So the next activity what I wanted to show here is either the assignment module or the workshop module. Both of them are sort of similar. The difference being one allows student also to grade. So I will show the workshop module. I hope workshop module is available. Yeah, it's there. So I can select activity at workshop. And so the first screen is very similar between the assignment and the workshop module, small differences. I'll also highlight the differences as we go. So let me say sample workshop activity. I can put a description to the activity. Description here for the workshop module or assignment module is the workshop or the assignment activity itself. So here I had to put the activity. It can be just like a assignment, right? Assignment specification, right? So I can say, okay, do this, or answer this question, whatever, right? So prepare this, whatever, right? So it is the description we had to give. So that I can give there. Then I have this option of grading where I can set up this peer evaluation, right? So let me show how it works, right? So peer evaluation, here we have options of setting 2 things. One, I can decide the grading strategy, whether it's going to be a rubric-based grading, comments-based grading, or number of errors-based grading. I can decide. Accumulative grading, different things I can decide. And I can then decide how we are going to give grades for each submission. This is about the submission, right? So we can give grades now based on 2 things, right? So there is the students are submitting answers. They are also marking others. Are we going to give some marks for them marking others? If yes, we can give that as well. That is what is here. So you can see grade for assessment, grade for submission. So grade for assessment means you can give some marks for marking others. So right, the default is 80% is given for the submission you make, 20% is given for the marking you do for other people. Let's say you are giving some marks for others. For giving like marking, you have basically going and marking and giving feedback, you have marks. So you can decide all this. Maybe for instance, you can make it to 0, or you can make it to 5, and you can make this to 95. Or you can make 50-50, you can decide, right? So that you can decide here how much marks you are going to give for students marking each other, like the marking part of the activity. Submission, how much marks you are going to give. So marking activity, you can even make it to 0, right? So you can make it 100 as well. So it's up to you. So you can decide between the 2. Now you have the usual part where how the submission is expected. This part is very similar for a workshop and also assignment, right? So you can decide what the students submit when they submit. So here we have already given them the assignment, right? That's the assumption. The assignment is given. So here, what do we expect them to submit? So we can put the instruction for submission here. So, okay, we are expected to submit a file. You are expected to take like a draw something and or do an activity or do whatever, right? Some handwork, and then you take a photo of it and submit. You can say whatever it is, right? All those can come here. And then you can allow students to submit online text, meaning when they log in and access this, they will get a box like this where they can type, and we can allow them to submit files, right? So we can decide. So let's say we decide not to allow them to submit files. You can untick this. So then they will only be able to submit inside a box. They will only be able to type and submit, nothing else, right? So if you say this and not this, then they can't submit, like they can't type anything and submit. They'll have to type in a computer, find a file and upload only. Or they can take a photo of something they did and upload only. Only uploading is allowed. By default, both are allowed. So by default, we also can say both are allowed, but one is a requirement. That also we can say. We can say both are allowed, but they must submit a file. We can do that as well. So you can decide between those. And when you are allowing files, you can decide how many files to allow. By default, it's 1. You can decide up to 7 files, right? So you can say, I want to allow them to submit just 1 file. Then I can decide what type of file I can allow them to submit, whether I can allow them to submit an audio file, HTML, image file, presentation, spreadsheet, all that I can decide. Let's say I want them to only submit a doc file, a document. So then I can decide that by selecting the doc. So where is doc? It's here, document file. So I can select this. And I can say I only want them to submit a docx, nothing else. So if I say like that and save, then in the submission file, the only type of file that will be allowed is a Word document file, nothing else. They can't submit anything else. So we can decide exactly what file we want to allow, right? So we can allow multiple type of files and multiple files as well, right? So that's possible. I just selected one, by the way. I can select many here. I can select audio, video. I can say any type of files as well, right? So if you put a star, it means anything they can submit. So I can decide. That's something useful. Then I can decide what the file size is. For the files they submit, what's the size of the file? Let's say I want to allow them up to 5 MB file. Oh, I can decide like up to these limits. Whether we want to allow them to submit after deadline, that we can again decide, right? So the deadline comes later. Yeah, it's here, right? And yeah, so that those things I can allow here. Submission setting. And then there is assessment settings. There are instruction for assessment, things like a rubric we can put here. Right, so we can give some instruction. This is particularly there for giving some help for students to mark. So you can tell whatever you want to tell about marking when you mark. So this will only be appearing when the students want to mark, not before. So you can say, okay, look for these points in the when you're marking. You give this much of marks for this much more marks for that. All that you can decide and give, right? And I'll skip some of those other options that are there. And then we can decide things like availability. You can decide these timelines. So you can see there is an opening of the time, submission deadline. Then you have 2 more timeline for marking part. So there's 2 activities students have to do now, right? So one, they had to do the submission. The other one, they had to do the marking. So we can allow time for them to do submission. Then there are 2 timelines, one for doing the assignment and submitting, another timeline for marking. Right? So those are the general settings, and they say. Right. And then as a teacher, I get this dashboard with multiple, in fact, like 5 steps. The first step is a setting up process. And then the next part in the dashboard is now the students, let's say they submitted and that time is done. You want to make them mark. So you can switch this on and confirm. If I want even now, like right now, what I'm doing is I'm not going by the timeline. Remember, I had a timeline like on Monday or Tuesday, I want them to mark. But I can allow them to mark early or later as well by changing these things in the dashboard. Now the students can start marking. So the submission phase is, now the submission phase is enabled. Now the marking phase is enabled. So I can enable these phases myself as well without following the timeline whenever I want. So this is, in fact, very useful in such situations like you do a day activity in a class where you ask them to do things online also, right? So where you can drive timeline without setting the timeline there. So you do like a workshop, half a day workshop. You ask them to, you give them an assignment, you give them in the system. You ask them to look at it, they work in a group or individually, then you ask them to submit. In the session itself, you let them mark. So there you have to drive the timeline, not based on a preset timeline, but you are going to do it in the go, right? So there it's very useful to do like this. So then you can go to the phase called evaluation phase. So in the evaluation phase, what you can do is you can go and mark it yourself later. So after student marking and giving marks, you will see the student marks and also you can mark yourself and you can finish it, right? So this activity is called a workshop activity. It is something on top of the assignment. You can do more than an assignment where you can also let students to mark by giving a guideline for marking, right? So these things are done, these things are not done. You can see them in the dashboard, right? So that's particularly the workshop activity, which is like an extended assignment activity with peer evaluation involved, right? And the last one, I'll take a few minutes to tell you what, I already have told a few things. Anyone who want to do an online proctored exam, how it is done. So I can use a tool. There's a tool. I used to do this using a tool called HackerRank. How I did this using the HackerRank tool, in fact, I've written an article about it. I can share that with you. So sorry for promoting what I wrote. So those who are interested in seeing how I used HackerRank for doing a Proctored online exam, you can look at this link. It's a very long article. It's not very long. It takes supposed to take 20 minutes, so which is long, and it has all those details. This was like a very old. The article was written recently, published recently, but it was this was done long time back, June 2020, right? So, but now we are doing more. So that's something that I wanted to tell you quickly and finish. So HackerRank, by the way, is a free tool for education, and you can write to support@hackerrank.com and get a free access as a teacher. So that's something useful as well. So that those details are mentioned here. And the last one I wanted to discuss is an extension to the quiz module. So the quiz module starts with the quiz. Like I said, that different type of quiz. The proctored exam, in addition to the quiz module where an exam can be set up, we also propose two other tools. One is Zoom. So Zoom is what we are using for the video proctoring, meaning to see what the students are doing. Plus what we call the Safe Exam Browser, in short SEB. SEB stands for Safe Exam Browser. I'll discuss that later. Where the students are allowed to do the exam or the Moodle quiz only through a certain browser, and that browser will allow only to do this quiz, right? So there are two things, right? So one, this quiz can only be done by a certain application, a browser, and when you enter that application, you can't do anything else in your computer, right? So you only can do this quiz. So meaning you are locking the computer, so the students will be locked out of everything else. They can only do the quiz. So we, at the same time, we also can log from the teacher's point of view or the evaluator's point of view. There's more than teacher involved here, because like in an exam, you have supervisors, you have invigilators and all sort of others, assistant registrar, examination, different people are involved. So all that can be, we set up a process here, and we are now running this. where all these people are involved and a lot of different tools are involved, guidelines are involved, policy is supposed to be involved. We still don't have proper policies, but we have procedures and approved ones by our Senate, our faculty boards and Senate. So we are using that for doing proctored online exam, which is starting from Moodle Quiz is the exam environment. Anyway, exam is Moodle Quiz, but we also have other restrictions and video to make sure they can't do anything else. So that's the last two. So we set up the question paper in a Moodle Quiz with various type of questions, MCQ, short answer, long answer, all are possible. In the Moodle Quiz, like we now know, Moodle Quiz has a timeline. So you can start time, end time, you can decide that. Give a small like window if you want to be like more flexible and allow them for issues like power, signal, such issues. But like when they start the quiz, it'll run a timer and it'll stop at the time that is specified. If you say 1 hour, let's say they start at 10:05, it will finish at 11:05. That I already have explained. So those two. In addition, there's another tool called Safe Exam Browser. That is what we are using for doing the locking. It's a browser which is available in our website. So you can go to safeexambrowser.org. They have guidelines on how to set it up and all that. So in simple term, what we are doing, like I said, is the students are supposed to download a browser and install it in their computer. Then if they use this browser, we can set up the quiz, the Moodle quiz, in a way it's only accessible through this browser. So we can block the quiz. So like this particular quiz, let's say, for example, let me go back to this quiz and edit this quiz. So quiz has this extra restrictions. The latest version has a separate app called Safe Exam Browser. Say one of those separate options starting from Moodle 3.9 or 3.10, the latest version. This is a bit older version. It's not, the administrators have to install the latest. So the browser security, you can here enable Safe Exam Browser use. Required to use a Safe Exam Browser. So if you do this here, then this quiz won't be available for students. You can see the quiz now has an extra comment saying this quiz has been configured so that the students may only attempt the quiz using Safe Exam Browser. So I'm not in a Safe Exam Browser. I'm in just a Google Chrome. So I can't access this quiz. Even students can't access this quiz. So if I become a student, you can see this quiz is currently not available. This quiz is set up like this. You can attempt this quiz like this. These details are there. But if you go through a Safe Exam Browser, which is a special browser, you can download, the students can download that browser for free from this website. It's like a Google Chrome, it's a free software. So you can download this browser from the download option. You have this browser is available for Windows. It's available for Mac OS. And also it's available for iPad. It's not available for, this is iOS, only iPad. So it's not available for other phones. It's not available for any phones. So you have to have an iPad or a PC computer or a Mac computer, one of those computers, Windows or Mac computer. Then they can access. Then the quiz is available. This quiz can only be taken through that browser. When you take the quiz through that browser, when you start that browser, you can't do anything else at all in the computer. You can't browse anything. You can't type anything else. You only be accessing this interface, nothing else. So you can't you can't go to any other websites. You can't run any other applications. Nothing else is possible, right? So that will lock the students from using anything else in the computer. So that is what we did, and we are doing for the exams, where we are using the SEB, Safe Exam Browser, and Moodle Quiz, plus Zoom for doing the looking at what students are doing. So we are putting a maximum of 12 students in an exam room and an invigilator, in fact, 2 invigilators checking how the students behave. And all these we record and keep. So that's what we basically do. We were talking about assessments. So remember, when you want to do assessments, we have to be careful. We have to make sure the institution is ready for it, and also teachers and learners are ready for it. And we had to be clear in giving instructions, and any assessment we have various constraints, things like considerations, the validity, reliability, fairness, and practicability of the assessments has to be there. Again, this is something I took it from the same guide I was talking about earlier, the UGC guideline. So make sure you look at that before you do some serious assessment. And I already have mentioned about these disclaimers at the beginning, just to remind you one more time.